I've always had a gentle and unhurried temperament since I was young. When I first met the tutor as a child, all my siblings were vying to show off their literary talents, but I remained indifferent. After coming of age and choosing a husband, my sisters all picked the sons of ministers or descendants of generals. While my aunt asked if I would be willing to marry that poor scholar, my mother kept giving me meaningful looks, so anxious that she nearly twisted her handkerchief to shreds. But under the complex gazes of the crowd, I slowly uttered a single word: fine. Later, the poor scholar became the regent. In the middle of discussing matters with his colleagues, he suddenly smiled and asked, "Lily, how about making you an empress for fun?" All the ministers and officials were so frightened they knelt down in unison. Everyone looked at me with trembling fear, holding the little white dog. I nodded. Okay, hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful stories every day. Now the story begins. I was married on the same day as my second sister. One went east, the other went west. She went to the general's mansion. I went to a dilapidated house. She had a grand wedding procession stretching for miles. While I only had the few pieces of gold, silver, and valuables my mother had saved up over the years, that day, my aunt asked me if I was willing to marry a poor scholar. After I said all right, my mother threw a fit in the courtyard. She pointed at me and scolded me harshly, saying that if she had known I was this foolish back then, she would never have given birth to me. I stood quietly in the courtyard and held up the fruit the steward had just given me, asking her if she wanted to eat it. She choked up, once again hating her own incompetence. Holding me, she cried all night, saying she was sorry. My eyes also reddened. I patted my mother's head and whispered, "Mother, don't cry. Ailey is fine. I don't really see anything wrong with marrying a poor scholar." I've overheard a few conversations among the maids in the mansion. The scholar's name is Xiao Zi, and he has been in the capital for 3 years. He was pursued by countless princesses and noble ladies who wanted to take him in as a male companion, but he refused. I never expected my father to cast such a wide net in seeking husbands for his daughters, and among them, he was actually included. His family was poor, so there wasn't much to compete for. I happened to be too lazy to compete anyway, so marrying into his family wouldn't bring so much trouble. Most importantly, the young girls said this scholar had a handsome face. Back in the day, riding on horseback through Chang'an Street, he received armfuls of flowers from young maidens. Sitting in the wedding carriage, my mind wandered, and I grew drowsy. When I looked up, the poor scholar Xiao Zi, as handsome as Panan, stood before me in a red robe. Her features were as exquisite as a painting, clear and elegant like jade. After meeting my gaze, she pressed her lips into a smile and placed the bridal veil on the table beside her. She asked if I was hungry. I surveyed the room. The adobe wall was freshly coated with white lime. In the center stood a half-worn 8 Immortals table, its surface polished to a shine from repeated wiping. Though there was a shallow crack along the edge, it had been carefully bound with red cloth. Noticing my gaze, he smiled and said, "Pretty poor, right? You come from a merchant family and have never seen such a shabby house, have you? If you really can't adjust, you can go back to your parents' home." He smiled openly, his eyes gentle. But for a wife to return to her parents' home right after marriage is a sign of contempt for her husband. Only then did I turn my gaze to him. Shaking my head, I said, "I don't dislike it. Apple, would you like to eat it?" I raised the apple in my hand. This apple was given to me by my mother this morning. She repeatedly urged me to be sure to eat it after lifting the bridal veil, to keep me safe. But at that moment, I had long forgotten my mother's words. Seeing Xiao Zilang's unparalleled beauty, I was utterly captivated. He asked me again if I was hungry, and I wanted to return the kindness in some way. He chuckled, stood up, took the apple, and went to the kitchen. He came back after a little while, holding a bowl of plain noodles in one hand. Steaming hot, a porcelain plate held carefully peeled apples. He lifted the plate to me and asked gently, "Little bunny, do you like it?" My eyes lit up. I picked up a little bunny in surprise, smiling until my eyes crinkled. She said slowly, "So cute, come and eat." This morning, I told the matchmaker that you'd feel unwell if you went a whole day without eating, but she said it's the custom. I shook my head and said it was fine. I didn't speak much. It was mostly him talking throughout the meal. He was more candid than any man I had ever seen. Well, to be honest, I hadn't actually seen many men. My father was often away on business trips, and whenever he returned, I never got the chance to get close to him. He was very shrewd with his calculations. Steward Jong of the Lee Mansion was an elderly gentleman. Though he had a good temper, he was like a smiling tiger. Then there are my older brothers, who are intelligent and outstanding. But unfortunately, we still aren't close. But here in front of me is Xiao Ziyi. He said his parents abandoned him when he was very young. The imperial examination is held once every 3 years. Last time, he couldn't make it because the journey was too far. So he simply came to the capital to wait for the next imperial examination. He found a dilapidated house that nobody wanted, fixed it up, and settled in. He made a living by copying books, writing letters for others, and teaching in a private school. By the time he finished telling his story, I had already finished half a bowl of noodles. After eating a few pieces of apple, I handed the chopsticks to him. Here, you eat. I have no particular pursuit of fame or fortune. Being able to eat when hungry and sleep when tired, that's more than enough for me. But Xiao Ziyi seemed very worried that I was suffering. Before going to sleep, we lay down in our clothes. He whispered repeatedly, "Do you miss home? I can send you back. We are not in the same world." Grabbing his sleeve, she said, "My mother said that on the wedding night, we must consummate the marriage." He fell silent. Even her breathing became lighter. After a long pause, he stammered, "No rush. Leaving you room to change your mind." I silently said to myself that I would not go back on my word. Life after marriage was ordinary, but far more interesting than when I was with the Lee family. We lived in the outskirts of the capital, where the scenery was beautiful. Xiao Ziyi studied in the morning and went to earn money in the afternoon. I didn't disturb his studies and just ran around playing. Today, I rescued a sparrow from a tree. Tomorrow, I'll chase a rabbit for 2 miles. That was the first time Xiao Ziyi frowned at me. He said, "What's a girl like you doing running around in this wilderness?" I replied slowly, "I'm not stupid. I can find my way home. Is that really the point?" Then, realizing his tone was too harsh, he softened it. "I know you're bored with no one to keep you company, but give me a few days, and I will give you a good life." From that day on, Xiao Ziyi spent less and less time studying. He even left home for days at a time. The first time he was gone for half a month. I thought he was going to make it big and didn't want to take me along for a better life. I was just about to pack my things and go home when he rode his horse into the courtyard. We looked at each other in silence, the atmosphere somewhat awkward. After a long while, he asked dryly, "What are you doing? I thought you didn't want me anymore, so I was planning to go home." I don't know if it's just my imagination, but I always feel like something about him has changed, his gaze, or his demeanor. In any case, the gentleness from our first meeting is gone. It has become much sharper. He quickly dismounted from his horse. As if presenting a treasure, he took out a small box of jewelry from his embrace. "When I married you, I didn't give you anything good. Now I'm making it up to you. Do you like it?" He opened the box. Even my mother never had a gold hairpin like this in her hair. I froze. I blurted out without thinking, "Did you get involved with a princess?" Xiao Ziyi looked at me with a complicated expression. "How could that be? I earned this myself." It turned out that he had gone south with a merchant caravan for business half a month ago. He was educated and quick-witted, and once he spotted an opportunity, he made a handsome profit. As a result, the earnings from these 2 weeks were equivalent to what he used to earn from copying books for half a year. I smiled sweetly, thinking how impressive he was. Seeing me smile, he also breathed a sigh of relief and quickly but gently placed the hairpin into my bun. He casually took my small bundle away, holding my shoulders. He said seriously, "I won't abandon you. I left in a hurry the other day and didn't wake you because you were still asleep. It won't happen again." I nodded. He tied the horse, which he had gotten from who knows where, to a tree and went to prepare a meal. I crouched in front of the horse, looking up at it as it grazed. He asked me loudly how I had been eating these days. I said I just ate whatever was available. He felt very sorry for me and added 3 chicken drumsticks to my meal at once. I just said that off the top of my head. I can cook, but I didn't want to end up being the one cooking at home all the time. So I made it up. After we finished eating, he somehow got his hands on some wooden planks and said he'd make a swing for me. I obediently said okay and sweetly praised him for being amazing. He blushed from the praise, There was a rustling sound at the door. I followed the sound and saw a furtive-looking woman peeking in at the courtyard gate. I know this person. She was the matchmaker and bridal attendant who saw me off in the bridal sedan chair back in Li Prefecture. When she saw me, she rushed over, tears and sniffling all over her face. Then she was about to kneel down. "Miss, how foolish. That poor scholar isn't named Xiaozi. His Xiaozi. This old servant has made a mistake." The dried persimmon in my hand fell to the ground. Meanwhile, Xiaozi, who was sawing wood over there, also stopped what he was doing. I was at a loss, because the old woman and Xiao Zedi's gazes were both focused on me. In Xiao Zedi's eyes, there was not only expectation but also a hint of desperate resolve. But I just calmly asked, "What's going on?" The matchmaker stammered as she explained. She said the master originally intended to send invitations to all eligible men in the city. She had meant to send one to Xiao Zi, but the little maid misheard and wrote Xiao Zedi's name by mistake, sending it to him instead. At that time, the household was busy, and no one noticed this small error. After everything was settled, Xiao Zi came knocking at the door. "Didn't you already reply to the post? How come after accepting the betrothal gifts, it's as if nothing happened?" Only then did this couple realize that the girl had been sent to the Xiao family. After hearing this, I suddenly understood. No wonder the paste for the red flowers outside the house wasn't dry when I arrived. No wonder the betrothal gifts were so simple, as if they were hastily put together. After all this time, it turns out they really were hastily put together. I just had to laugh. Seeing that I wasn't speaking, the old woman grabbed me and tried to pull me away. "Miss, you must come back with me. Xiao Zi has already given the betrothal gifts. Someone has to answer for this." I stood my ground against her, refusing to take even half a step forward. I said calmly, "I'm not leaving." Hearing this, Xiao Zi breathed a sigh of relief. Quickly putting down the saw, he strode over and firmly pulled my hand away from the old woman's grasp. "This is my wife." I pretended to be timid and hid behind Xiao Zi's broad shoulders, whispering, "Can't we just return the betrothal gifts?" "But, miss, the betrothal gifts, they've all been gambled away by the young master. Now Xiao Zi keeps coming to the estate, and no one dares to tell the master. You should just go back. Li Kui is the youngest child in the family, and also the most troublesome. He goes to the gambling den every day. My father has broken several sticks trying to discipline him, but the eldest aunt dotes on her youngest son. Later, whenever the master of the house was away, she would step in to prevent such troubles." Xiao Zi's entire demeanor turned cold. He said displeasedly, "But I have accepted the betrothal letter, and I have sent the betrothal gifts. There is no reason to send the bride back." I steeled my heart. "I'm not going back. We've already consummated the marriage." Xiao Zi tightened his grip on my hand, squeezing it until it hurt. I said, "I'll return the betrothal gifts. You can leave." The old woman had heard that Li, the illegitimate daughter of the Li family, was a fool. But she never expected her to be so resolute at this moment. Since it's been said like that, she didn't want to lose face by making a scene here. She had no choice but to compromise and say, "Then at least give me something so I can temporarily report back." The only valuable thing on me at the moment was the gold hairpin he had just placed on my head. I poked Xiao Zi in the back and whispered, "The hairpin." Xiao Zi ignored me. He was about to take out the jade pendant he kept close to his chest. That jade pendant was the only thing his parents had left him. How could he just give it away like that? I held onto his arm, pulling the golden hairpin from my head. "Here, but you have to show me the bill. If there's any overpayment, I'll get a refund, and if there's a shortage, I'll make up the difference. Otherwise, I'll tell Auntie." She hurriedly agreed and left, looking fairly satisfied. Xiao Zi glanced at me sideways. His eyes held a complex mix of emotions, pity, guilt, and even a hint of ruthlessness. I stood on tiptoe and covered his eyes, saying gently, "Don't look at me like that." He gently took my hand, his forearm exerting a slight force, pulling me into his embrace. A gentle scent of mint and pine nuts, mixed with the fragrance of ink, enveloped me in an instant. He whispered by my ear, "I will give you something better in the future." After a moment of hesitation, I wrapped my arms around his waist and patted his back twice as a gesture of comfort. Fortunately, that hairpin could offset the betrothal gifts. The old woman was also true to her word and returned some silver to me. However, from that day on, Xiao Ziyi was away from home more and more often. Though he was busy, there were still changes at home. I moved from the outskirts of the capital to the city. I swapped coarse linen for plain cotton, and then plain cotton for silk fabric. Even the small box was filled to the brim with gold ornaments. Xiao Ziyi, worried that I wouldn't have hot meals regularly, even hired an old maidservant to cook for me. I said there's no need to spend money. He also told me not to worry about saving money for him, saying he married me so I could enjoy a life of comfort. I didn't say anything, but my face grew rounder the more I ate. I call the old maid Aunt Xiao. She doesn't live with us, she leaves after preparing 3 meals a day, but she's a know-it-all in the capital, picking up all sorts of fresh gossip just by strolling down the street. That day, she chatted with me while cooking. Cautiously, she asked, "Xiao Li, are you related to that merchant Li family in the capital?" I sat on the small stool, propping my chin with my hand. "What's wrong?" I heard that the youngest son of the Li family, named Kui, offended someone he shouldn't have, and had his hand broken. After a woman gets married, her relationship with her natal family becomes even more distant. I didn't know about these things, so I shook my head and didn't respond. I felt quite relieved inside. The next day, as soon as Xiao Ziyi returned, I shared this matter with him. He said indifferently, "Is that so?" There wasn't much surprise in his reaction, and he asked me if I was happy to hear the news. I was rummaging through his pockets to see what goodies he had brought back for me, and casually replied, "Of course I'm happy." He patted my head and, as if by magic, produced a glass and jade hairpin, pinning it into my hair. He praised it as if admiring the most beautiful scenery, saying, "It looks so beautiful." I didn't think much about why he wasn't surprised. After all, since Xiao Ziyi had been out making his way in the world for a long time, his temperament had grown increasingly steady. He only really smiled in front of me. When he was away, he often wrote letters to me, but this time away from home, the handwriting in the last letter wasn't his, but the letter said that Xiao Ziyi had an accident and suffered a severe leg injury, and it asked me to pack up and come home. I didn't think much about it at the time. How severe is severe? Anyway, just thinking, if he injured his leg and had to lie in bed to recover, I could handle the cooking and go out to earn some money as well, later. It turned out I was still too naive. The day Xiao Ziyi returned, Aunt Xiao happened to be on leave. I opened the door myself, but I didn't recognize him at all. An old man was driving a rickety cart, with hay piled on it. I thought he was a beggar, so I fished out 2 copper coins from my pocket and said, "Here." He waved his hand and pointed behind him. "This person gave me directions, I've brought him here, and now I'm off to continue my cultivation." I moved closer to take a look. Turns out there was a person lying here, hidden by the hay, filthy as coal. I said, "What is this? Did we come to the wrong place?" I was about to send them away when I suddenly saw those familiar eyes. It took me a full half-stick of incense's worth of time to recognize them. My mind raced through countless possible reasons before I hesitantly spoke. Xiao Ziyi." He seemed to be awake, because his eyes were open. He just wasn't blinking, like a dead fish. His face was gaunt and emaciated, his right leg hanging limp on the cart. I calmed myself down. Just as I was about to help him up, the old man yelled at me, "Be careful, don't kill him." I was immediately displeased. My husband went out perfectly fine. How could one be accidentally killed? I called over the husband of the neighbor lady, and together we managed to get Xiao Ziyi into the house, but his expression didn't change at all along the way, and my heart felt all crumpled up. After thanking the older brother, I slipped the old man some silver. After sending them away, I finally went inside. I calmly boiled some water, sterilized the scissors, and prepared to change his clothes. But when I cut open the tattered rags on his body and saw the wounds, large and small, as if he had been abused, I couldn't help but cry. My tears fell onto his hand, and he trembled. He turned his head mechanically and looked at me. He raised his hand to wipe my tears, but when his hand paused mid-air, it dropped stiffly. He said gruffly, "Go back." I cried even louder. His face was deathly pale, making the bulging veins on his forehead particularly noticeable. I cried as I changed his clothes, but to be honest, I still felt a little embarrassed. Even now, thinking about it still makes me a little nervous. As for Xiao Ziyi, All I can say is, it was spectacular. I focused intently on wiping away every speck of dirt. I applied the medicine we had at home. He was in so much pain that sweat covered his forehead. After covering him with a quilt, I rummaged through the house looking for Silver. I rushed out without stopping to find a doctor. They had called in several doctors, but all shook their heads and said it was incurable, because the patient's will to die was exceptionally strong. When Aunt Xiao returned, she was startled. I quickly pulled her into the courtyard, pressed the last bit of silver the family had into her hand, and told her she didn't need to come anymore. Aunt Xiao was a shrewd person. She knew that no decent family would be harmed like this. She nodded hurriedly and ran off. None of Xiao Zedi's friends, who used to come over for meals often, ever visited again. I pawned all the accessories he had given me. I searched all the physicians in the city. Some refused to come after hearing my description of the injuries. Some came only to treat the superficial wounds, just to earn some silver. I dared not beg for help in front of Xiao Zi. Every time the doctor looked hesitant, I would take him outside the courtyard and beg him to give it a try, assuring him that money was not an issue. I also went back to find my mother. My mother told me to go home, but I refused and ran back home despite her anger. In the end, I had to pin my hopes on this last doctor. He sighed and shook his head. All the bones are broken, with soft tissue in between, clearly shattered by internal force. There's no way to treat this. Miss, you're still young. It's obvious your husband has offended someone. You should run while you can, to avoid getting caught up in this. It's only a matter of time before he dies. I pressed my lips together and just handed him some silver, telling him not to speak nonsense. I silently prepared the meal. Suddenly remembered that he refused to eat before. I don't know where I found the courage back then. I took a mouthful of porridge, pinched his cheeks, and pushed it in with my tongue. That one time was all it took to make him behave. Today, I made porridge and prepared to feed him spoonful by spoonful. He suddenly began to speak. Did you hear that? Everyone is telling you to leave, so go. His voice was as rough as dry wood scraping against the ground. I had never lost my temper. Hearing his words at this moment, anger surged through me, and I shouted, I'm not leaving. These days, I haven't been eating or sleeping well, turning him over every hour to prevent bedsores. He would hold in his urine until his face turned blue, and I had to keep an eye on him, afraid he would harm himself. Although I wasn't favored at home, I had never suffered like this before. I may say I can cook, but in truth, I haven't done it many times, just enough to make the food edible. Chopping firewood, washing clothes, scrubbing pots, sweeping the floor, all these tasks fell on me. My hands were covered with cuts, one after another. My once plump cheeks grew increasingly thin and sharp. I grew more and more aggrieved, slammed the bowl of porridge on the table, and cried out, if I leave, what will you do? No one will take care of you anymore. You fool. I couldn't connect the broken man before me with the young man who had married me just half a year ago. I didn't know what he had been through this past month, but I knew he had been good to me, and I couldn't abandon him in his time of hardship. It's that simple. He closed his eyes in pain, a clear tear sliding down the corner of his eye. He whispered, Lily, I don't want to live anymore. I found Aunt Xiao and asked her to help me find someone who could treat leg injuries. Aunt Xiao gave me her answer today, mysteriously pointing towards the red wall in the east. She whispered, the palace. I smiled and obediently thanked her. I took out most of my silver to go and make the necessary arrangements. It was running out quickly, but I didn't dare to delay. I was afraid that if too much time passed, it would become incurable. That evening, as dusk fell, I returned home dejectedly. Suddenly someone stopped me, saying the circus from Bianliang was short of a performer. They asked if I was interested. I replied slowly, what do you mean? He said they were short of a person to act as a female guinea pig. As long as I transform into a guinea pig and squat nearby, imitating a guinea pig, it'll be fine. I asked cautiously, why me? Oh dear, it's because the performance is tonight. That girl suddenly said she couldn't make it. Oh my, it's so frustrating. If you don't want to, I'll go ask someone else. Our circus is right at the entrance of the market. After saying that, he was about to go ask the next girl. I quickly grabbed his sleeve and said, I'll go. Circus performances often run very late, but the pay is good, enough to feed Xiao Zi and me for half a month. I really do have a slow and steady temperament, somewhat resembling that of a guinea pig. so I performed effortlessly. Many people tipped and cheered, with silver coins being thrown at me. The boss kept hinting at me from the side to smile and please the crowd. I had no choice but to crouch on the ground. Waving my hands in front of my chest to show my joy, I suddenly felt an undeniable gaze. This gaze made me inexplicably ashamed. It wasn't until the crowd was about to disperse that I realized where this gaze was coming from. Xiao Ziyi was lying on the ground, staring at me with bloodshot eyes. I fled to the shed behind the stage as if running for my life. I hoped Xiao Ziyi would think he had mistaken me for someone else, but when I came out of the shed with my wages, Xiao Ziyi was lying at the entrance, covered in filth, one leg hanging limp and useless. Passers-by all avoided him, but I couldn't. This is Xiao Ziyi. I cannot take a detour. Like a child who has done something wrong, I stood before him with my head hanging in dejection. The boss, overjoyed and counting his money, came out and saw the disheveled Xiao Ziyi and me. He hesitated in astonishment. Xiao Ziyi wished he could bury his head in the ground. I quickly ran over to help Xiao Ziyi up, speaking softly but firmly, "My husband, Xiao Ziyi." The boss was money-minded but not unkind. Seeing that the two of us were in no state to go home, he promptly arranged for a cart. I am as strong as an ox. Pulling the cart home, I asked, "Why did you suddenly come out? Your hands are all scraped. I'll apply some medicine for you when we get back. I saw the medical clinic sells crutches. Let me buy one for you." With that, I rushed into the medical clinic and happily bought a crutch with the silver I had just received. Xiao Ziyi is willing to go out. I am happy. Passing by the steamed bun shop, I bought 2 more buns. I eat the vegetarian ones. Xiao Ziyi eats the meat ones. Passing by the neighbor sister's house again, she happened to come out to dump her foot washing water. She only saw me peeking my head out and asked, "Where have you been? Your husband just went out looking for you. Worried you might run into danger." My face flushed red as I pulled the cart into her view. We came back together. He went to pick me up after work. By the time we finished dinner, it was already midnight. He surprisingly said to help her up, "Congratulations, congratulations." Before, I had to force him to eat. "Lily, from now on, don't go seeking medical advice or taking medicine anymore. And don't let yourself be treated like an animal for others' amusement. If this leg is useless, so be it. I'll just find another path to take in the future." I was stunned. Xiao Ziyi is willing to live on. Xiao Ziyi is willing to live on. From that day on, Xiao Ziyi began practicing walking with crutches at home. Once again, he was covered in bruises from falling. I asked him how exactly he got injured. He wouldn't say, telling me the less I knew, the better. Sometimes he would write small notes late at night and send them out by carrier pigeon as soon as they were finished. He is very capable. Once his will to survive kicks in, he learns everything quickly. Soon, he was able to walk with a crutch. His pace almost like that of a normal person. I don't know what he was doing, but he started leaving early and returning late again. He started cooking again, taking care of me comfortably every day, but I knew that with his broken leg, he was suffering and in deep anguish. So I didn't give up on using money to bribe and beg the palace officials. That day, I returned home utterly exhausted and suddenly saw a luxurious sedan chair parked at my doorstep. I hurried inside, worried that Xiao Ziyi had gotten into trouble again, but everything was just as I had left it, except for a muffled, low growl coming from inside the house. I pushed the door open and, to my surprise, found my second sister Li Wen holding a handkerchief to her mouth, her eyes red and swollen, and the imperial physician was sitting by the window, treating Xiao Ziyi. I was stunned. Second sister turned her head and looked like she was about to cry when she saw me. "The news of you going to the palace to beg for help has reached my ears. Why didn't you tell me? I thought second sister and I weren't close." Frozen in place, second sister walked up to me with a pained heart, cupping my small face. Such a good child, worn down to this state, suddenly being cared for by this sister who had barely spoken to me before. I felt strangely embarrassed. I lowered my head and whispered, "It's nothing, second sister." That evening, my second sister drank wine in the courtyard, and before leaving, she stuffed a lot of silver into my hands. She said if I ever ran short of money, I should go to her residence and ask for it. Between sisters, there's no distinction of birthright. When we were young, Second sister was mischievous and always pinned the blame on me whenever she got into trouble. Seems like taking the fall back then wasn't in vain. That evening, Xiao Ziyi had also been drinking. He even kissed me. I pulled back slightly. He quickly apologized, saying he wouldn't do it again. My heart went, oh dear. I could only clutch the hem of his clothes and mumble, I'm not stopping you from kissing me. Go ahead, it feels so good. He smiled. I hadn't seen such a bright smile in a long time. I smiled along with him. Second sister's remark about grinding me down didn't harm me, but it dealt a deep blow to Xiao Ziyi. He somehow got his hands on pearl cream and insisted on applying it to me every night. Before leaving in the morning, he would gently wipe my hands and face with a warm towel, kiss my lips, tuck in the covers, and quietly slip away. At noon, he would return covered in dust and cold, and whether I was awake or asleep, he would feed me, then leave again. After my evening bath, he even insisted on drying my hair himself. He was so exaggerated that he wanted to arrange everything for me except when I was taking a shower. The strength of those days felt like a dream. I reverted to my lazy and slow-tempered nature. My hands never touched a drop of water, and the moment I opened my mouth, it was, "Husband, I'm hungry." The physicians who treat the emperor are truly remarkable. Gradually, Xiao Ziyi no longer needed a crutch, and he went from limping to showing no signs of having been injured. His face had gained a bit more flesh, and I don't know if it's because in a wife's eyes, her husband is as handsome as Panan. He looked even more handsome than when I first met him. From youthful innocence to having more sophistication and ambition, I've moved again with Xiao Ziyi. This time, it's a large courtyard house with 3 sections. He's very busy outside, but afraid I might get bored, so one day he came home and brought me a little white puppy. I was overjoyed beyond words, holding him. I kissed and laughed with joy. He supported my back and asked if I liked it. I cradled the puppy in my hands, jumping with excitement. I like it so much. Give it a name. I thought for a moment and laughed. Call it Little Xiao. Upon hearing this, he suddenly grinned mischievously, pulling my hand to touch his lower abdomen. His voice was deep and almost magical. Lily, Little Xiao is right here. I was both angry and embarrassed, holding the puppy as I ran 3 feet away. He burst into laughter behind me. In the end, we settled on the name Pear Baby for the puppy, and I ignored the shameless Xiao Ziyi for 3 days. Now that I have Pear Baby, I take him out to show off every other day. It just seems like something has happened in the imperial court recently. Rumors have been spreading among the people about the return of the true dragon's bloodline and the will of heaven to restore the nation. I find it strange. When Xiao Ziyi returned in the evening, I nestled in his arms and asked him what it meant. Xiao Ziyi idly played with the ends of my hair and retorted, "My family comes from a long line of merchants, so we rarely hear about court affairs, but based on all the storybooks I've read, something strange is bound to happen." Xiao Ziyi pinched my cheek gently and said warmly, "Lily, you're so clever. It's too chaotic outside lately. Don't run around holding Pear Cub." I nodded meekly and said yes. The next day, a large number of men in black were hiding all over my house, especially where I lived. I complained to Xiao Ziyi that it was too exaggerated. No matter how chaotic things were outside, it had nothing to do with us. Xiao Ziyi, however, answered a question with another, asking me what kind of courtyard I liked. His question immediately caught my attention, and I began to envision my future home. Xiao Ziyi was like a turtle in a wishing well. Soon enough, I moved into the big house I had wished for. The small bridge over a flowing stream, a leisurely courtyard with wild cranes. Somehow, I even ended up attending the coronation ceremony and became the princess consort. Even if I were foolish, I should have realized who the true dragon was, and I'm not foolish at all. I stared at Xiao Ziyi, who was dressed in royal robes, as if I'd seen a ghost, and stammered, "Why aren't you just a poor scholar?" Xiao Ziyi finally confessed the truth to me. He was by no means a parentless orphan. At the age of 13, he was found by the Jin Prince's faction at his adoptive parents' home and told that he was the legitimate descendant of the former dynasty, the orphaned son of the Jin Prince. The jade pendant served as the proof of identification. They invited him back to the capital to inherit the legitimate throne, but at that time, Xiao Ziyi understood that if he returned, he would only become a puppet in their power struggle. He accepted this reality. He began to study and enrich himself. changing his identity and lying low in the capital. I asked, then should your surname be Zhao? That's not important, Lily. If it weren't for you, I would never have sought power or wealth in this lifetime. But back then when you married me, your eyes were too pure, so pure that the thought of you living a simple, frugal life with me filled me with shame and pain. I said, but your original intention wasn't to marry me. I really hadn't thought about getting married, because it meant taking on more responsibility. But when the invitation came to me, I hesitated. This was the only chance I had to marry you. It even crossed my mind how the Li family treated you with such disregard, and it made me angry. I thought, why not marry you myself and take good care of you? I was at a loss for words. He explained, it turns out that when I was little, I once gave a bowl of rice to a poor child who had come to the capital to take an exam. It was during the new year, and the city was covered in snow. The poor child nearly froze to death on the streets. A little girl who had sneaked out to play saw him and brought out a big, steaming bowl of food, wishing him peace and happiness. I don't even remember it myself. I asked, so you haven't been in the capital for just 2 years, you've been here all along. Then why did you give away the jade pendant back then? Because I wanted the Prince Jin faction to believe that the true orphan was Xiao Ziyi, not me. If I desire power, it must be under my control, not someone else controlling me. Then what really happened with your injury? At first, Xiao Ziyi only intended to scheme for wealth, but the Prince of Jin's faction, having somehow gotten wind of it, actually intended to kill him, and even the Emperor sent men to secretly stir up trouble. During a business trip, he was captured and abused, only for a group of riders to suddenly appear and set him free. It turned out that there were 2 factions within the Prince of Jin's party. One faction wanted to kill the orphan and install someone else as emperor. One faction insisted on orthodoxy. At that time, he thought his leg would never heal, a cripple, still a burden to his wife. Did not deserve to live. Later, moved by me, he vowed to seize power. My heart is broken, and I curse that all men are liars. I used to praise him for his honesty. I was so drowsy that I could barely keep my eyes open. I turned over, wrapped my arms around his waist, and said, husband, it's wonderful that you've succeeded, but if you fail, I will die with you. I said that on purpose. After all, if he fails, I will surely die. But if I am willing to die, that's a different matter. That night, he held me even tighter as we slept. I complained about the heat, but he still wouldn't let go. In my first month as the princess consort, I brought my mother to stay with me. My mother's wish for her daughter to rise high had come true. This month, she's been looking at me with extra favor. She stopped bringing up the idea of me getting a divorce and instead started urging me to have a child. I found her nagging annoying and was about to send her back. Before I left, my mother grabbed me excitedly. The matchmaker told me you two have already consummated the marriage, so why hasn't there been any movement in your belly yet? Ali, I know you find me annoying, but I still have to say it. Having a child is the only way to secure your position. Although the prince dotes on you now, a man's love is unreliable. You must have your own support too. I interrupted her, saying seriously, Mother, you're mistaken. In fact, you already have a granddaughter. My mother was overjoyed and reached out to touch my belly, wanting to listen. I dodged her, lifting Pear Cub onto my lap. I held her front paws and shook them gently. Pear Cub, call her grandmother. My mother's face turned green with anger. With a cold snort, she turned and headed back into the Lee mansion without looking back. Ever since my mother started pushing for grandchildren, I've been telling everyone that Pear is my mother's granddaughter. People like them, with nothing better to do, are just bored. Within a few days, the word in our circle was that my mother's foolish daughter was at it again. After that, she never brought it up again. I don't know how it happened, but the matter even reached Xiao Ziyi's ears. When he came back that night, the way he looked at me was intense. I was unnerved by his gaze. I burrowed into the covers, only to be pulled into his embrace and kissed so forcefully I could hardly breathe. A hard object was pressed against my lower abdomen. I shifted. Trying to move away, he held me down and told me not to move. I whispered, Husband, we've been married for so long. Why do you only kiss me and not consummate our marriage? Is that thing of yours all show and no go? I said softly and slowly. Xiao Ziyi, however, was breathing more and more heavily, so I shut my mouth. He took a deep breath and released me. He whispered softly, Lily, wait until I succeed in the future, and I'll make sure you know just how capable I am, I asked. What do you mean by succeed, when I can ensure that you and our child live a safe and prosperous life? He kissed my forehead and coaxed me to sleep. In my drowsy state, I vaguely heard him call for a servant to prepare water for a bath. His power was growing ever greater. I didn't understand just how great it was. I only knew that I was living better and better, with more and more servants in the mansion, and my daily expenses even far exceeded those of my stepmother. Often, the wives and children of this minister or that general would come to visit. Today they would invite me to admire flowers, tomorrow to go for an outing. I was too lazy to go and turn them all down. Xiao Zi praised me for being clever. This is the time when I should see no one, I acknowledged with a sound, no explanation. I just have a vague feeling that Xiao Zi is up to something again. Sure enough, within a few days, the emperor suddenly passed away. He allied with the Prince of Jin's faction to launch a campaign to purge the court of evil ministers, overthrew the new emperor, and installed a puppet child emperor. He then took control of the real power as a hero who had restored the nation. But I don't really understand these matters. All of this was told to me by him. From that day on, he became the regent, and as I lay there, I became the regent's wife. To my surprise, I found that even my father now had to bow to me. This must not be. This must not be. My father will always be my father. I have no interest in court affairs. Instead, I've taken to writing storybooks. After all, I usually don't like doing anything, and the only diligent part of me is my eyes. I haven't forgotten what my mother told me last year. A man's love isn't always reliable. If I have my own income, even if he stops loving me in the future, I won't starve. Xiao Zi no longer needs to run around everywhere. But now those pot-bellied men have started coming to my house. They never avoid discussing matters in front of me, so I've observed carefully.